Congrats on getting beyond $1 million. What got you here won't always get you there. This is a podcast for entrepreneurs who want to reach beyond their 7-figure business and scale to 8, 9, and even 10 figures. I'm Brad Weimert, and as the founder of EasyPay Direct, I have had the privilege to work with more than 30,000 businesses, allowing me to see the data behind what some of the most successful companies on the planet are doing differently. Join me each week as I dig in with experts in sales, marketing, operations, technology, and wealth building. And you'll learn some of the specific tools, tactics, and strategies that are working today in those multi-million, 8, 9, and 10-figure businesses. Life can get exciting beyond $1 million. Erik Van Horn, it is great to see you, man. I appreciate you carving out some time.
Brad, awesome. Glad to be on.
Yeah, man. So we've known each other for several years, and our business paths have intertwined in many ways now. You are a business partner with Justin Donald, who's a dear friend. But the majority of your life, and I dug in a little bit before we talked, before today, majority of your life has been really, really heavy in franchises, which should be no shock because it's kind of what you're known for. But give me the rundown, because it's like dozens and dozens and dozens of locations and different types of franchises, et cetera. How did that start, and how'd you get into business in the first place?
I started out as was going to get my real estate license, eventually got it. I was in Virginia Beach at the time, registered for law school. As a straight C student, that was going to be a disaster. So didn't do that. Started selling real estate and had a little lawn company. I was mowing lawns for a lady, and long story short, I left mowing that lawn with a contract to buy her house, subject to, I assumed her mortgage on a mortgage that she paid 20 years on. For 20 years, she owned it and paid it down, and the property value increased. I bought it from her by just taking over the loan. And that gave me my seed money to buy my first franchise. And by the way, she wanted to do that. She's like, Erik, you seem like a nice young man that's really wanting to make a name for himself. Like, we don't want this house anymore. And we want you to buy it from us and you to pay the closing costs. And so I didn't have any money at the time. Like, I was broke. And I called my parents and said, hey, do you want to partner with me on this 50-50? And they thought it was too good to be true. Turned out it wasn't too good to be true. We did that. They paid the closing costs. I got my first large chunk of money, and I rolled that into my first franchise. And it was a local franchise in Virginia Beach where the founder was. And it was a pretty decent sized franchise at the time. It's called Liberty Tax Service. And then I bought that, started in Kansas City, bought a larger area in Austin. And that's how I know the east side of Austin really well, or what used to be the east side of Austin.
Right.
Because where all the check cashers used to be and, payday loans and all that stuff, that's where we were putting our tax offices. So we built that up to 42 locations and then sold that.
Jesus.
And that was about over an 8 or 9 year period.
Well, out of curiosity there, just because I have to scratch my own itch, why are the tax offices in those areas, right? So those are low income, check cashing, pawn shops, et cetera. Is the target market the less wealthy demo for those tax offices?
100%. The target.
I didn't know that. So
you got like CPAs. When people think taxes, they're like, in our world, they're thinking tax strategy CPAs. In the lower income demographics, they're thinking, how quickly can I get my refund? I've got a couple kids. I didn't make much money. I'm going to get a large check from the government. And they wanted to get their check quickly. And so we would provide loans to them. It was called a refund anticipation loan. So we would partner with banks, and we would basically float their refund and give them their refund that day or the next day or within a week. And then the bank would get the refund from the government. And it was a very high interest loan, just like check cashers and pawn shops and all of that kind of stuff.
Okay. Why did you, and so we're going to get into this, I think, in more detail, but why did you pick that one? Was it luck of the draw? How did you decide?
Oh, complete luck of the draw. They said things like, they were big fans of the E-Myth and Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And they said, we are in the tax business, but we don't want CPAs. We don't want accountants. We want people to work on their business. And Michael Gerber with the E-Myth, he spoke at the first convention that I went to with them. So they were big believers in that. And the founder, John Hewitt, was very active in the business, very active with their franchisees and the sales team and whatnot. So I just got to know him. I had friends that were buying it, and it was just, it was just luck of the draw. And what was really lucky for me is I started out in a business that I couldn't do. Like I couldn't do a tax return. I didn't know how to do a tax return. I never did a tax return, although we prepared, tens of thousands of them. I never did one. So I was forced to work on the business and not in the business. And I realized this is a marketing business, not a data entry tax business, but it's a marketing business. If you want to increase revenue, you need to get out there and hustle and bring in customers. And so that's really what I worked on was more the marketing side of things.
Damn, dude, that's such a good lesson. And I mean, how outside of franchise and even probably inside, how uncommon is it for somebody to start in business in a thing where they have zero competency in the actual execution of the business, right? The actual skill set required to fulfill.
100%.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So,
and I look back and I was really fortunate that was the case, because being in business, 20 years later, like people are so stuck in their business. They're expert at the thing, or they love the thing. They're really good at it. They love it, or it's just what they've always known, they've always done. And so they're deep into the weeds. And so as I went on to own more franchises as a franchisee, and then eventually as a franchisor starting those, I realized how uncommon it is for people to kind of work on the business until you get to the point where you have to. And in franchising, if it's brick and mortar, once you have 3 locations, you can't be the person that works in the business, because you have to remove yourself from that first location to start your second location. And that's usually why the second location doesn't do as well, because the first one was built around the entrepreneur. And then that when they build the third one, they've kind of learned the lessons, and now they can start to really grow more of an empire, because they realize how to build the team. They also take the manager from that first location to open up the second location. So usually the first location goes down in revenue. The second location doesn't open up as strong. And then they realize they should really be working on the business, building a business versus building around a person and just hiring better people and everything that goes into scaling a business the right way. In franchising, brick and mortar, that's what happens. Once you hit 3 locations, it's easy to go to location 4, 5, 6 and beyond.
Interesting. I love that. I mean, I love it as a case study for any other business, right? The number of, there are different sticking points or inflection points in businesses based on the industry, where it happens with revenue, for example, or headcount. But the number of people in my ecosystem that are, several million, tens of million, even north of that are still stuck operating in their business is wild. I mean, it's just, it's everywhere. So franchising is a cool model to see that. So the pitch for Liberty Franchise that got you in was this notion of work on the business, not in it. And that's what they were selling.
100%. And they had some financing options. Because again, I didn't have a whole lot of money. I made money on that first real estate deal. But they're like, hey, we'll finance part of this. And looking back, that was uncommon too in franchising. So it was one that I could afford. And there was younger people in their 20s like I was getting involved with it. So it was just a good group of people. And looking back, Brad, I'm still really good friends with that group of franchisees that came in that same year that I did, around my same age. Some are my best friends today, and they've gone on to do such cool things. And we realized after we got out of Liberty how hard that business really was. Like, we made it in that business, but the tax business, the retail tax preparation business, is a really hard business. And so if we can make it in that business, we could do really well in other franchise organizations. And some franchise organizations, the franchisor is so good. The market, their marketing and their operations, what they teach their franchisees is so good. The franchisees think they're really better than they are. So some of those franchisees that have done very well go into a lower performing franchise system and they suck. They don't do very well because they leaned on the franchisor so much. So again, looking back, I was fortunate that I learned a lot of business lessons early on that made me a better businessman. As I got into other businesses, it made it much easier for me.
Okay, so did you say 42 locations, 46 locations?
42.
So 42 locations. And I want to clarify a couple things, because in prep for this, I was looking at your path and the Liberty Tax structure, and I read that you had 6, but then you sold them to work on being a master franchisor. Is that accurate? The reason I want to bring this up is because I don't know the difference between a franchisee, but specifically a master franchisor or a franchisor or a master franchisee. Can you clarify the language there?
Yeah. So I'll kind of tell the story. So I was in Kansas City, and I had a handful of locations there. My first time as a franchisee there, my first year. And then Liberty Tax had an area development program. It's called area development. Back then, it's really referred to as master or area rep now. So there's random different terminology, but just think about it. As I bought the Austin region from Waco to San Marcos, and I was able to, my job was to sell franchises in the market, help them open, support them. And in turn for that, I would get half of the franchise fee and half of the royalties. So it's kind of like a mini franchisor in that particular market. The reason franchise brands do that is we paid a large cash injection to be able to buy that. Like it was a good amount of money that we paid to buy that region. But in turn, we got half of the royalties and half the franchise fee. And then the reason franchisors do that, besides just getting a cash injection to the brand, is they get free help. Like we are there working. We're taking some of the revenue away. Eventually, it's a lot of revenue that we take away. Once you get 42 locations up, you're making a decent amount of money. And that's why some franchise systems go the master route or the area rep route. So when we got to the point where, and I knew it, I was always getting prices from the corporate office, asking them, how much is this worth? How much will you pay to buy this back from me? Because eventually the brands buy them back from the franchise, from the area developers or the area reps. And I noticed when talking to other area reps that the price or the value that corporate would buy it back for decreased once you started decreasing the revenue, which makes sense. That's how businesses work, right? You start losing the amount of increased revenue that you have every year. The value goes down. So I knew in a year our revenue was going to decrease because some of our franchisees were either selling, they weren't going to do as well. So I knew revenue couldn't sustain year over year percentage growth that it had been. And once that happens, value would go down. So we sold in 2 different tranches as just before value was going to go in the tank. And there was changes in the industry too. With legislation, the government getting involved with the loan programs and whatnot, that was starting to have an impact on the business. And so that's why it was time for us to get out.
Got it. Okay. So I like that. So, and it's master franchisee. Yes.
I would say master. Yeah. The best way to say it is master franchisee.
Got it. So, and the idea with that basically is it gives cash injection to the franchisor, and it creates a hierarchy of ownership for the master franchisee to really drive on their own. So you're kind of putting a equity partner in place to go drive this region and make sure this region is successful at the same time.
That's exactly it.
Love it. Cool. Okay. So from there, 42 locations, got out of it. And then there's like this litany of different franchises that you were a part of. In the next one was what?
Well, it's a home care company, like senior care. And it was again, a master. I bought the master for that brand in LA, everything south of LA County. So San Diego County, Orange County, Riverside County, Inland Empire, all of that. So we bought everything south of LA County for that particular brand. And I wanted to be in the California market because I didn't realize how bad it was for business in some ways, but I knew that there's so much population there. I could have multiple brands because I could fly out to California and spend time on multiple different brands. So we bought that home care company. We had success with that too. We built it out, eventually sold that. In the meantime, I also bought a brand called Amazing Lash Studios that was eyelash extensions. They were one of the first brands that came out with eyelash extensions. I had to educate people on eyelash extensions. Now, it's pretty commonplace. The founder of Massage Envy was involved with that one. So I thought, this is going to be an interesting one. Then I realized how much work they wanted us to do. So Massage Envy is another concept that they built the brand on master franchisees. But what they did differently than what Liberty Tax did and some of these other brands, they wanted the master franchisee to do all the training on the ground, own locations, and they just required a lot more. Same amount of money that you would make, but a lot more work. And I didn't want to do that. And my business partner at the time was going to go all in and open up locations and have the training facility and whatnot. And he's like, Erik, this is too much work. I'm not going to want to do all of this. So we ended up selling that. And then in the meantime, at this same time frame, we bought into a company called Sola Salon Studios. And now salon suite concepts are kind of common knowledge out there. But at the time, it was really revolutionizing the beauty industry, the hair care industry. And Sola, along with a couple other brands, were the first brands to do that. And so we bought the entire Orange County market. Me and 3 other guys. Each one was about $1 million to build out. So we just decided to all go in together. And we built that thing over a 5-year period and then eventually sold that to private equity. But that was a real fun one.
So your approach to this is different, I think, or turned into being different than most people's. And I think, and this is obviously your space, not mine, but when I think franchises, most people aren't approaching it from the master perspective, and they're coming in to own a franchise and kind of buying into the dream of somebody's going to build the system for me. It's going to be an easier way to execute. There's a proven roadmap, and here's the math on what I expect to get out of this. And it's all kind of, here's the blueprint to go. But most of your experience, it sounds like, has been above that and looking at what are the types of business and or geographic locations that make sense to implement a concept, and how do I create the franchises and the franchise model, or is it somewhere in between?
Early on, I was in the trenches building out locations with Liberty Tax. Everything since then, most everything since then has been more on the master franchisee level or just partnerships with people where I'll bring in the equity, capital, and some knowledge, and they will be like the owner, the face of the business. And that's what I do currently. I've got some brands that I'm a franchisee of, but I'm more of an investor in those. But I like that master model when I kind of grew up in franchising, because I really learned franchise sales. And so I did franchise sales for companies. I did it for myself, and sold hundreds of franchisees into franchise systems. Some were my own, some were others. And then I learned how to be a franchisor by being a mini franchisor with these master models, Amazing Lash, the home care company, and Liberty. And then I started to get on the franchisor side, really on the franchisor side. So I helped start one in the roofing space. I took an early exit on that one. And then currently my business partners and I, there's 4 of us, where we partner with brands and we help them grow. So emerging brands, Brad, maybe they have 0 locations or a couple corporate locations or under 50 locations, and they've made mistakes along the way, or they don't want to make mistakes. They want to build enterprise value in their franchise brand as a franchisor, and they want to do it quickly and have an exit in, let's say, 5 years. That is a substantial exit. That's really what we're focused on right now over at Front Street.
Did I hear that right? That's sort of turning these existing things into franchises, or is it taking an existing small franchise model and improving it?
Both.
Okay.
It can be both. We prefer a brand that has a few locations or at least a corporate model. They're already a franchise, but they realize that they want to grow fast, and they would rather partner with us where we can have have a lot of injection capital or just knowledge into that business and keep them put the guardrails up so they don't make the mistakes that most brands make. So they might have a couple locations. One of our brands has like 40 locations open right now. We're talking other brands that have 0 locations as a franchisee. They don't have any franchisees, but they have corporate locations with amazing unit economics, whether it's like, high revenue numbers, which you want as a franchisor, or you want high revenue numbers because you're making money off of their revenue. And then, they've got strong net margins or making a lot of cash flow or EBITDA. So, and it's proven for a while. So that's what you want in a franchise system. Like when we look at a franchise system, we want founders that are going to be in the trenches working with franchisees. It's like they are hustling. They want that thing to grow, and they have a business that they've built that is extremely successful and replicatable, and they want to grow through franchising. So because so many brands out there, it's easy to slap together a brand, especially if you've been in franchising, slap together a brand, put it out there, sell a bunch of franchises, and then it kind of goes downhill. Franchisees aren't making very much money. There's not a lot of support from the franchisor. And so things can take off, but they're not sustainable. And then it's not really sellable. Or if it is sellable, you're not selling it for very much. And that's when it gets picked up. Somebody buys it, a private equity buys it for pennies on the dollar, and then they have to kind of bring it back to life. We like brands where that founder was hungry. They have an amazing business right now, and they need a partner like us that can come in and help them grow it.
So I'm looking at when I think about franchising, I think about this in sort of a few buckets, and you've just made another bucket for me, which complicates my mental model here. But I have always thought about it in terms of entrepreneurship or investing, and sort of, if you are early in entrepreneurship, or if you're not, but you want a roadmap put out for you, and just to keep opening new franchises, and that might be the master model or just having a handful. That's one model is, hey, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm going to go in and run these businesses and keep opening more. And that's my clean, nice, easy, I'm going to say simpler business model, not easier, but simpler, perhaps not easier. And then the other is, as an investor, I'm deploying capital, right? However I got my money, where do I put it to make a return? And there are tons of vehicles for this, right? Like I lean heavy in real estate. And a lot of people that I know lean heavy in investing in other businesses. One would be an owner-absentee, quote unquote, owner-absentee franchise model, right? And then you've introduced this third category, which is sort of in the middle, which is the master model or the franchisor model, which is an operating model to some extent. But I'm trying to make sense of where that fits into my little buckets. So I guess the question is, first and foremost, as an entrepreneur, why would one lean heavy into, what's the big upside or downside to leaning heavy into buying into a franchise model, if they're looking at one to a few versus starting their own thing entirely? And how do you think about those two things?
It's easy. A typical entrepreneur, or someone that's wanting to leave their 9-to-5 or doesn't have a job anymore and they want to be self-employed, franchising is kind of an easy next step for them as a franchisee, because they just go in and they should just execute what the brand has proven to be true. Like that's what they should do. And they should make the kind of money that they want to make through that. If they do their due diligence and the franchisees are doing that kind of revenue, then they can stop at, 1 or 2 or 3 locations. If they want to make 100,000 or 300,000 or $1 million, whatever it is, they can grow to that. And some people, once they hit that number, is called $500,000 of income a year, they're happy and they don't want to do anymore. So they stop. Others want to keep going and they grow to 10 or 12 or 50 locations, whatever that is. So there's a path to grow, or they diversify into another brand. So that's the entrepreneur that wants that proven model. And here's the other thing in franchising. There are true entrepreneurs in franchising, because you can, the franchisor is training your managers, you're training your second in command. Like the franchisor is training that person. It's not you as the entrepreneur doing everything for them. So that's what's one of the things that's kind of nice for true entrepreneurs in franchising. So that's that one bucket. The master model is people that have been in franchising and they don't want to be a franchisor because there's a lot of risk. There's delayed gratification. There's everything, it's not easy to be a franchisor. So many of them fail and it costs a lot of money to get started. And that you're relying on everybody else to make, you're helping them make you money. And so it's a completely different model. So first bucket, franchisee, kind of in that bucket is that master model. That's one bucket. Franchisor is bucket number two. And they're like entrepreneurs. Like we talk to entrepreneurs every week. They have a really cool business model. We're talking to one right now in the property management space. Really cool model, makes them, over 7 figures a year net profit, works 10 hours a week on it. And he said, Erik, we got this cool model. It's a little bit different than the average property management company out there. We are a franchise right now, but I'm not sure I want to continue franchising it. We don't have any franchisees. I don't want to work more and I don't want to put more money into this. I want to keep living my life. And we're like, you should have never franchised it. Don't start selling franchises now because you are no longer in the property management space. This is true for any franchisor. You're good at making cookies. You're good at having, doing taxes. You're good at, whatever it is. And you've been told you should franchise your business and you do it. You are in the franchising business now. You are responsible for supporting franchisees, coaching them, helping them be successful. Franchisees will never give you as a franchisor credit for how well they do. They will always blame you for things that go wrong. And that's just the nature of being a franchisor until they've kind of gone through the whole life cycle where they realize it's a more of a good working relationship with the franchisor, and the franchisor actually wants to help them. And then they're working together and it's kind of a win-win situation. But early on, franchisors don't really, they don't understand this dynamic in the game, and they think it's going to be easy. It's an easier way to scale than just them opening up more corporate locations. So in the franchising, as a franchisor, you are no longer in the business that you were in before. You were in the franchising business, and it's a new business, Brad. That's the thing that they don't understand. Yeah, I was successful in, making widgets or selling widgets or providing the service, but they've never been that franchisor before. They don't know the landmines that are in front of them. They don't have the relationships that they need. And that's why so many of these things fail. They put so much money into it and they think they might have the best product or the best service or the strongest mode or whatever it is. But if they can't sell those things, it's not going to go anywhere. So there's so many challenges that franchisors face. And it's, like I said, delayed gratification. You're spending all this money for the entrepreneur, the franchisee, to start making money. And once they hit high revenue, then you start making money, but it's all delayed. You don't make money off of the franchise fee. That goes right back into getting more franchisees. You have the corporate staff helping support them. And so there's a lot of delayed gratification, but there's a really nice payday. Once you have 50, 100 locations open up, you're making $5 million of EBITDA as a franchisor. And then private equity will look at that 5 million and, they might offer 15, 18, 20x on that, which is, a good multiple. But that's the multiple that franchisors get versus the entrepreneur at a 3x or a 4x.
Yeah, so I want to talk about that specifically, the exit side of things. But I also think that there's a strong parallel with that idea of jumping from franchisee to franchisor and the growth in any type of business. Because with franchising, You're talking about opening one location to 2 to 3 to 4, and then moving and saying the franchisor is a different value proposition. Your roles and responsibilities are different. But if you look at most business models, and they're at, again, it industry dependent, whatever, but they're at 1 million, 5 million, 10 million, and they want to move to 100, the CEO's role necessarily is going to change dramatically, right? You might have been the salesperson, or you might have been the manager. And as that business grows, your role has to change. Your responsibilities have to change. So I think there's a strong parallel there either way, whether it's the franchise model or otherwise, for an aggressive entrepreneur, right? For somebody that wants to really scale something. But what is the value proposition? Let's talk franchisee first on exit, and then franchisor. So if you're an entrepreneur and you just want to open a few models, what can you expect in terms of the exit proposition on that? Do you sell them back to the franchisor? And how does that change if you are a franchisor?
What's nice about franchising for franchisees is there's a built-in pool of buyers, because there's always people that are wanting to grow and people wanting to sell. And so some of these franchise organizations have franchisees that are aggressive buyers. They are buying out other franchisees. And that's happening in Club Pilates. The Club Pilates franchise system, the franchisees are healthy. They're doing well. I have friends in it. Friend back from Liberty Tax that I got him into Club Pilates, and he did very well, and he wanted to continue to grow. And so he partnered with a private equity company, and now they are aggressively acquiring franchisees. And I'm guessing, I don't know, they're paying anywhere from 2x to 6x, depending on a lot of different factors.
2x to 6x, just call that EBITDA?
EBITDA, yep. Mm-hmm. And they're paying more for a location that might have white space around it to open up 2 or 3 or 4 more. They might pay less for something that is not performing very well. But so the franchisees are selling to some of these bigger franchisees. And then he just went on and he bought 2 more franchise brands with his private equity company to kind of continue to do the same thing. Over at Soul Salon Studios, we had built we had a protected area where we built 12 Sola salons in Orange County. And we bought the rights to do 3 more to lock down that market for 1 more year. Because we knew the private equity company that bought Sola wanted to grow in our market. So we knew after a year that franchisor was going to come in, our exclusive rights were gone, and they were going to come in and start opening up locations, which meant they were going to cannibalize some of our existing locations. And so we didn't want that to happen. So that's when we started to started working to sell to them. So again, same thing. If we have a protected area, we have something of value. And we had opportunity to build out more. And so that was enticing to them. So that's why we sold. You'll see that like Orange Theory franchisees and area developers. They're a lot of the early master franchisees at Orange Theory. They would open up their own locations, and then private equity was very interested in them because they kind of controlled a region. So now the private equity company could control a region and get money from the franchisees, but they could also pick where they wanted to grow. So they had more control. And so they were able to get much higher multiples than an average Orange Theory franchisee would, because they were also the area developer or the master franchisee, which meant they had control of a market. So, and they had white space. So white space control equals higher valuations for the franchisee.
Got it. So independent franchisees, the exit path is other franchisees or a master franchisee. Once you get up to the master franchise level, then you've got private equity that might be interested in buying you out as well, and potentially at a better multiple.
I would say private equity is interested at that point, but also the dynamic of the master franchisee and the franchisor, that dynamic changes, because the franchisor is now looking at you and saying, you are making $1 million. And if I had that $1 million, I have private equity that would pay 15x of that. So it's 15 million, and they know that that's what it's worth to private equity. And yet that's an expense to that franchisor. So the franchisor will go and say, I will buy you out at 4x or maybe 6x. So they will make the difference between the two. So that's when the franchisor starts buying them back. Typically right now it happens before private equity is even interested. And now a lot of that's even built into the contracts, like a predetermined, some of those are going to possibly be predetermined price points or the multiples that they'll pay for that stuff.
Got it. Awesome. And then as a franchisor, the exit path is who or what?
As a franchisor, the exit path is, like a family of brands. Neighborly used to be called the Dwyer Group, and just big money. Family of brands. They own multiple and a lot of different franchise brands in the home care space. Some are in the fitness space. Some are in the beauty space. So they want to have a family of brands that are kind of in a similar industry. Others are just there's some brands were more like family office, like think big money family offices that they just want to buy a brand and hold on to that brand. Others are just private equity companies where they have, they'll have probably 12 brands that come in there, and they will take them from, where they are today, build them up, sell more, trim expenses, increase EBITDA, and then have another exit. And that's when these founders of these brands are probably going to roll in some of the original sale into that larger company, so they'll get a second bite of the apple. So there's multiple different paths. There's investment bankers that are just focused on franchise brands, and they will shop it around. Some are bigger brands that own big companies, but they also own some franchise brands. Think about Belfour. Belfour is a huge company, but yet they have some of their brands are franchisors. So what people like these buyers of franchisors, they like them because it's consistent reoccurring revenue. It comes in every month. Where franchisors get in trouble is contracts. They have a million different contracts with their franchisees. So not everything is uniform. And that's when value starts to decrease for the franchisor. They didn't realize it at the time, making special arrangements, special addendums, special amendments, special deals, which, they really can't. Some of them, it's illegal to do. Some of them, they shouldn't have done it, but that eventually will hurt the exit value of a brand when they're just not buttoned up like that. But really, and here's the other thing too, Brad, there's other ways to make money besides royalties. Early franchisors think the money is in the royalty, 6%, 7% royalty, but franchisors make money on rebates or kickbacks or different things, whether it's material, it's vendors, it's whatever it is, there's other revenue streams for the franchisor. Should be still offering that product or that service to the franchisee at the same or better price that they could get for themselves. Yeah. But that's not always the case with greedy franchisors. But not all franchisors are greedy. That's what I was going to ask. There are some that are greedy, but some are not.
Well, that's what pops up for me is I have these situations routinely with strategic partners. So at Easy Pay Direct, we've got different strategic partners, and they have an audience of business owners, right? That is our target market, and we would love to serve them. And some of those people, it's uncommon, but some of them say, yeah, sure, we're happy to promote Easy Pay Direct to our audience. We want to get what's best for our audience. No, we don't want any kickback for it. We don't want any financial relationship. We just want the best deal for our audience. But the majority would rather be paid for it. In the event of a franchisor, and I have this situation with banking relationships in the reverse, right? Where our banks, I say, why don't you just give us the best deal, and then we'll be partners in this thing, right? And as a franchisor, I kind of look at that model and think, look, if you're taking the royalty, you have a fiduciary responsibility to pass on the best deal possible and not try to gouge me. But that seems to be different from franchise model to franchise model. What's your experience with that, and how do you feel about it?
Well, you just took it to two extremes. You have a fiduciary responsibility to give me the best deal possible and not gouge me. There's something in the middle of just like, where can both win in that? So because as a franchisor, I get, let's just call it a 50% discount on the product, because I built this franchise brand and we do massive volume, and that massive volume allows me to get a large discount across the board. Do I need to give that whole discount to the franchise system? Maybe, maybe not. Or can I give them half of that discount so they can't get it less expensive anywhere else? I'm making money on it. They're happy because they couldn't, if they were a mom and pop, they couldn't go get that particular, rebate or discount themselves. So I think that's where it's a good win-win, where the franchisor wins and the franchisee wins.
I love that. That's a great point. Okay. So I know that you're tight on time today, but I have to get a couple specifics here, because I think the majority of the people that listen, and certainly our target market, are people that want investment opportunities, right? They're growing their business aggressively. And we talk a lot about the different elements of continuing to scale businesses. But one of the things that is perpetually a conversation is, what do you do with cash when you have it? So from an investment perspective, where does it make sense? Where does franchising make sense as an option? What are good franchises? How do you approach that? Do you approach it? Where do you start there? If you're a business owner, you have a bunch of money and you're like, maybe I should buy some franchises.
I'll start out with some warnings of what not to do and then what to do. Because just like in the internet space, the marketing space, there's a lot of people that claim they can do a lot of things and they really can't do or they're not as good as what they say that they're really good at. Franchising's similar. Like when you start talking to a franchise, or you're getting sold from that first conversation, they are selling you. Now, they also want good franchisees, most of them, but you're in a sales funnel. And then you introduce the broker world, franchise brokers, franchise consultants, and they'll introduce you to a handful of brands. They want you to buy, because if you buy something, they get paid, and they get paid a lot of money, and that's okay. But franchising is regulated by the FTC. So there's certain things they can and cannot say, but there's just a lot of promises out there, Brad, that I see of absentee ownership or semi-absentee ownership. And it may or may not be true. You as the buyer or the investor need to validate that. Just because they say it's semi-absentee or absentee doesn't mean that it really is. And you might look at some numbers and be like, okay, they're making $500,000. Well, that's an owner operator making $500,000. Mm-hmm. That's not a semi-absentee owner finding a manager that's really hard to find and having the same result. So I just want to make that kind of disclaimer. Just because you see big revenue numbers or profit margins or profit numbers in different documentation, you need to validate that to make sure it's true in your circumstance, like your ownership, the type of ownership that you're going to have in that, and the market and everything. So with that said, what I like is brands that are proven. Like if I'm going to be an investor in a brand, I want that brand to be proven. They have a number of locations open. And the operator has operated within that brand, opened up multiple locations, and has a track record. So successful operator and successful franchise brand, where we can continue to open up locations by buying out or buying new territories and building from the ground up, or start buying out existing operators that are ready to exit, like my buddy did at Club Pilates. That's the safest route. It may not be the most upside, but that's the safest route. And that's where I like to be that passive investor with those people. So if I'm have a pile of cash, I'm looking to invest it, I would start talking to my franchise owner friends to see why they are not growing as fast as they want to be. Most of the time, what you're going to hear is they don't have the banking relationships. The banks aren't giving them enough capital to be able to grow as fast as they want to. And that's where you can step in. And that's what I've done with different franchisees in different brands. So that's probably my favorite way to do it.
Well, let me pause you on that one because I don't have any franchisee friend owners. So if an outside investor was like, hey, I want to invest in something, you as the franchise guy are like, oh, I'll find the people that run franchises and give them money to grow their business. Is there a pool of those somewhere?
No. So there are people out there. The true answer is probably not. Like, I mean, that's the truth, Brad. Like, there's people out there that will tell you it's possible. They say you should do it. They say, I've got a group of franchise. I'm putting together a fund or whatever it is. I've not seen any of those work yet. And I know people that have done that and they've tried it and it has not worked yet. So like, that's the true answer. I'd love to be able to say, here's the thing here's the place to go and here's the website to go. And this is where you can put your money in and it's easy, but it's not easy. And if you're invested in franchise brands at the franchisor level, you kind of need to be connected with people like me that have the inside scoop, because none of that really makes it out there to the general public. It's all private stuff. I had the opportunity to invest. I love pickleball, and I had the opportunity to invest in some early pickleball brands, but I didn't like them. It just wasn't the right one for me. So I'm very picky on what I invest in. And that's more angel investing. That's more like venture capital. That's not cash flow investing. So if I've got capital that I want to deploy, is probably not at the franchisor level, because that's more angel or venture. It's at the franchisee level, which is like normal business ownership level. So it's just, I think of the same thing as if I've got a buddy that has an HVAC company and he needs capital, I will inject capital. I will partner with him. Same thing in franchising. You're partnering with that franchisee. I don't have a really good answer for that, or a really sexy, cool answer for that. That's just the truth.
Well, I think that's helpful. Let me back out one level. And basically what I heard was, if you want to invest in the franchise system in a franchisee, you still better have an operator.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have to have that operator.
Yeah.
That's the franchisor just gives you the playbook. The operator is the one that executes it and really makes it successful. And that's the beauty of franchising. Most of the time, they're owner operator. They're very or if they're not owner operator, they're active in the business, and the outcome of that business depends on them. And that's the same for any business out there.
All right. That's not the answer that people want as an investor, but I love it.
No.
So before we wrap, to that end, what do you think are the closest models in the franchise system to owner-absentee?
I'd say they're more kind of real estate based. The most semi-absentee one that we had was Solo Salon Studios. And that is kind of more of a real estate play. So if you start to hear the franchisor equate it to real estate or something else that is a bit more passive, like a rental thing or whatever it might be, that is going to be more passive or semi-absentee. If there's a lot of employees involved, or if the model doesn't have a highly paid, doesn't have low employees, or if it doesn't have a highly paid, like operational person, C-level, COO type person in there, $150,000, $200,000, a lot of that person that can really run a company, it's probably not going to be semi-absentee. Because with that said, one of our brands, the name's GoGlow, GOGLOW. They are like a spray tanning, not organic, but healthy spray tanning. One of the things that we fell in love about them is the employees stay forever. They are making a lot of money. I have to be careful what I say here, but they are making a lot of money spraying people versus like putting on eyelashes or cutting hair or whatever the other things that they could be doing. So it's an easier job. They're making a lot more money. So look for brands that have high employee retention, and the employees actually enjoy working there because it's a good working environment and they can't make more money anywhere else. So that again, but that's not absentee at all. But those are some of the traits that I would look for.
I love it. Well, I appreciate it, man. I think there's a lot more we can dig into, but I know you have a hard stop here. If people want to find out more about what you're doing, where do you want to point them?
Check out scalablefranchise.com, Scalable Franchise, or Front Street Equity Partners. It's frontstreetep.com. And you can check me out there. I've got a podcast and a Facebook group for people that are interested in franchising.
I love it, man. Appreciate you carving out the time. Until next time.
Brad, it's always fun. Appreciate you.
Love it. I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I enjoyed doing it. I need your help. There are 3 places you can find Beyond a Million. The podcast itself, beyondamillion.com, which has some cool free resources, including a free course. And we finally launched the Beyond a Million YouTube channel. I would love it if you would go there and subscribe. And if you don't want to, you still would probably enjoy seeing the visual content. Check it out, youtube.com/@Beyond a Million.